Thank you, everybody, for joining us again for another episode of Pursuit of Purpose. The show is What Are We Doing? And normally our show is aired live, but due to some technical difficulties today, we are pre-recording. I'm Rob.
I'm Chuck.
Today we have with us a very special guest contributor for the show. He's got a unique perspective on the topic we're going to have today. The topic is our addiction to distraction and how it's an actual global pandemic. Wouldn't you say, Chuck?
I would.
Well, our special guest today is a man that is, he's been on our show before. He was a wonderful guest, got an amazing story, amazing journey in his life. And he's somewhat of a local legend, a bit of a celebrity and everything in his own right. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Go ahead, take it away.
Did you say in my own right or my own mind? I just want
to know. In your own right. In your own right. I hope you're a legend in your mind as well.
Both, brother, both.
I'm Elton Hollis. Man, I really appreciate you guys bringing me back on the show. It's always great when you get invited back. You know, it's always, I start to wonder when you only get to go one time, but they bring you back. That's usually a good sign. So always great to visit with you guys.
Well, we appreciate you, and we know you've got a unique perspective on this. And as I mentioned, we're talking today about the addiction to distraction. And when you hear those words, I mean, it's kind of a strange way to talk, like nobody really talks like that. What does that mean? What does it provoke in your mind? What kind of thoughts do you hear?
It's something that really speaks to me because I think I have a big problem with it. And the first thing pops into my mind is obviously the cell phone. The type of work that I do and having essentially three main jobs that I do with three different companies, on the pretty side of things, I like to call it multitasking. But essentially it's juggling distractions. And a lot of the times I have to stay engaged, but I'll be honest with you, and I get outside those parameters and it just turns into filling space when it shouldn't be.
You know, you're in a very unique world, business-wise. Yep. You're in an industrial field, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember right, you actually work in the safety aspect of the industry. Is that correct?
Yes, safety training and safety consulting as well. Yes, sir.
That's a fascinating thing because as I thought about bringing you on as a guest show today, I thought to myself, you could actually speak to the changes that have been forced on the industry in the relation of safety because of our addiction to distraction. Think about all the things in your world that you have to deal with just because people have lost their desire and so forth, their ability to focus.
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. Well, it changed the way that you approach safety. Used to back when I first started in the business, which is way back in the 1900s, although being the late 1900s, you had a safety guy or a safety person on the job. And that person's job was to go around and try to make sure everybody was safe and things like that. But society has changed. And as a society, we adapt. And what we've done since the 2000s and really since COVID is people have adapted at a fast rate of speed. And our attention span has become smaller and smaller. So you've seen the rise of behavior-based safety. And instead of just having one safety individual, now you train all of your supervisors to have safety training. So you don't have just one safety individual or one site auditor. Now you have anybody that's got any responsibility has got safety training. Plus you have your safety auditor. Plus you have safety signs everywhere. Plus you're doing, instead of just doing a weekly safety meeting, now you're doing daily safety meetings. You've got all of these different things that are happening every single time to try to make sure that safety is at the forefront of your mind every time you turn around. And that's because that's what we deal with in life. You don't have just commercials between movies anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have them every 30 seconds when you get on your phone. Every time you watch Netflix or Hulu and you don't sign up for the high dollar packages, they happen every time there's something great about to happen in a TV show.
That's right.
So,
That's
so
right.
that's how we operate.
Sure. Sure. And we don't begrudge, the marketing industry. I get it. That's how they
Sure.
make money.
Sure.
However, if you can, talk a little bit to how in your industry, obviously digital communication has become an asset in a lot of ways, because I don't have to literally get in the truck and drive over. I can communicate information from site to site, and you may be miles away, but that has to have a balance, I'm sure, because because people are sitting there with that device that could also be a hindrance or help.
Absolutely. I remember when I first started working with my father at Mason, we would show up to the office 2 and 3 hours before work to plan the day. You had to make sure you had all your material. You had to make sure it was available. You had to plan your day. That was time you took away from your family early in the morning to plan that day. And you had to have all that material so that you didn't have to make several trips back and forth, because you didn't have cell phones back when we first started that ability. Now, when you get somewhere, you have the ability to make a quick trip, or you can make a phone call to somebody at the office. Hey, can you bring me this? Or you can order concrete at the punch of a phone, or you can look up the price of something real quick and price check, rental equipment or something on your phone in 30 seconds instead of having to call somebody and it taking an hour and a half. So those kind of things, it's really helped a lot on. Same thing with emergency response. A cell phone can be great for emergency response, or how to do something. I've seen people be able to realize how to react to bloodborne pathogens or chemical spills by using the SDS on their phone and looking up the chemical response where they couldn't read an MSDS sheet because they'd never been taught on it before. So it definitely has a give and take on it.
Yeah. So as you pointed out, there are some definite advantages to it. And I mean, just like anything in life that especially advances in technology, they're intended to improve, our quality of life, our way of life, our profitability in business. But just like anything in life, it can be perverted. It can be bastardized to the point of destruction. And as it looks to me, as it appears, we're headed in that direction really fast. We are losing the ability to effectively person-to-person socialize. We're losing the ability to effectively plan, just like you talked about how you and your dad had to sit there in the morning and make your materials list and get ready for the day. Now people just fly by the seat of their pants because they think this thing is going to save them. All they got to do is just show up. Yeah. Because they've got a phone, they've got, resources at their fingertips. Well, if something were to happen in our world these days and we lost electricity or signals were all down, would we just cease to exist? I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, we're making ourselves so dependent to this little distraction from real life that what do we think is going to happen? I mean, it's
one of my favorite Saturday Night Live skits is Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry. And this Will Ferrell character was a newscaster, probably a precursor to Ron Burgundy. And the teleprompter goes down, and within so many moments, they go into total chaos, and they're like savage attacking each other and all this because they lost that directive, somebody telling them what to do and how to speak. And I don't know, I just every time I see it, I have to watch it all the way through because it ends so prophetically. And then all of a sudden the teleprompter comes back on, and they're like, "Oh wow, what have we done?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's that way. You look at things and people sometimes get a little crazy with it. I look at the discussions on Facebook and some of the discussions over meals and when we visit lunch, and I hear things about the young folks, like they can't drive standards and they can't write in cursive and they can't do all those things that, the people that are saying these things are the ones that were complaining about it. Nobody wanted to write in cursive and everybody wanted to drive automatics when we were in school, but we blame the young kids for not wanting to do it now, or not knowing how to do it now. But I think it's one of those things where it's like everything else. If we didn't have it, we would adapt at some point and get on with it. We're human beings and we're built to do it that way. But it's one of those things too, where you don't want to get to that point. I think if you don't have to hit rock bottom, you don't want to, and there's two things I think that stand out to me that worry me personally. And it's because I see these two things in me. The one is I see the loss of deep thinking. I know that Facebook and social media has gotten small tidbits of knowledge out there to people from somebody that loves quotes. I think that there's a lot of folks that have learned nice little tidbits of information, but a lot of inaccuracies, like Abraham Lincoln didn't say, get you some. You know what I mean? That wasn't his quote. Just because it said it on there, or it just didn't. It wasn't that way. But it's one of those things where they did learn small things, but the loss of deep thinking, and I find myself doing those things. So I had to adapt. I had to go back to not listening to audiobooks and reading actual books and making myself get through that process. And I'll be honest with you, those first 10 or 12 pages, man, it's difficult. You got to push. I find myself having to push through that.
Yeah.
And
profound.
It
Yeah.
is.
And that was that deal. It was like, man, that's awful that I had to push myself through the first 10 or 12 pages to a book. That's awful from somebody that enjoys reading.
Not only reading, but writing. You're a writer, you're an author as well. And I know that I share a similar struggle with I like to listen to books because I have a difficulty. I probably have, what do you call it, where you see stuff upside down? Dyslexia. I probably have a form of that because when I read written text, I can't retain the information. Like it's as if I'm pouring, liquid through a screen. It doesn't stick. You know what I mean? But the truth is that if I were, as you did, if I decided to dedicate my focus to adapting to that, I could probably overcome it, and it would probably be a worthy endeavor. But do you find that when you do sit down to read, to actually pick up something made out of trees and read the actual ink on the page, do you find that your mind says, check your phone? Isn't that crazy? Like this, it's almost like our conscience has now adapted. As you said, we are adaptive creatures, and it's like, it's this need,
right?
It's this dependency. It's so crazy.
I notice sometimes in my home, but not too much, but definitely when I'm out in public and say there's a couple or a family sitting next to us at a restaurant, and the minute somebody gets up to leave, maybe go to the restroom or something, everybody's looking at their phone because their talking partner has just walked out the room. I'm sure I'd like to think there's for good reasons, but I really do think it's for distractions. I think they're instantly bored. And so they check and see if there's a little red number next to their message part at the bottom of their phone.
Yeah.
So somebody
I am the world's worst about that. If I'm sitting in a passenger seat, I'm usually asleep, but if I'm not asleep, then I'm on my phone because I do not want to be bored.
We have developed this uncanny entitlement for entertainment. Like the entire outward universe owes me entertainment.
Yep.
I can't sit here, like you said, deep thinking. I can't sit here alone with my thoughts. Oh no, I need input to distract me from the possibility that I might have to face whoever I am inside.
Right.
You know what I call that? That's a digital pacifier.
Yeah, that's a great term.
Yeah.
And I refer that to myself because I I use that as a distraction to escape uncomfortable emotions or self-reflection because, and especially in restaurants,
Yeah.
because to me, it's a little bit uncomfortable because I'm sitting in a restaurant, and especially if I don't know anyone there. I'm sitting in a restaurant and whoever I'm eating lunch with or I'm at dinner and you're sitting at the restaurant, especially if you're done eating, and the person you're talking to is gone and you're looking around and there's nobody around that what do you do with your hands? I mean, you're just sitting there. Uh, it's an uncomfortable situation to me now because I'm not used to doing that. Same way at home. Now, what I've started doing is if I go out, I've realized if I go outside and I'm in my shop or if I'm outside, I can self reflect a lot better than if I'm inside. And I'm not sure if it's because of the sounds, the smell, being out in nature, stuff like that, that helps with it. But that's what I feel like for me is it feels like almost like a digital pacifier. It's just something that I'm using to pacify me.
That's amazing. And I really appreciate the humility that it took to admit that. That's a lot of courage. And when you talked about it, I actually could visualize. I've got a particular restaurant that I like that my wife and friends, and we go to quite regularly. And like many restaurants, it's got a bar. And when you mentioned that, I can actually see so many times I walk in the door and I look around. I always do this. I scan the room. Just you probably do the same thing. When I walk in, I scan the room. And in my mind's eye, very seldom do I see anyone looking up.
That's right.
Everyone else in the room is already looking at their phones. So then it invites you to just go sit down and get on your phone. There's no prompting to be social. And before all this took place, before all this existed, before MySpace, even before Facebook, all that stuff, people would go to a bar. You remember the Hofbrau?
I do.
So I used to go to the Hofbrau for lunch to play shuffleboard.
The best burnt steak ever in Southeast Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I used to go there because I like to play shuffleboard, and I didn't care that much about eating, but I like to interact. And I would bring my team with me that we worked together, and we'd go there. And because nobody had a cell phone, we were forced to be social with each other. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Like, and we didn't feel so awkward. We didn't even think about it. You remember that? Like, there was a time where.
And I can appreciate establishments like that. So, and not just because Frankie is just a heck of a human being, but Rick and Jackson Lumberton. I mean, you look at the establishment there, and you think, hey, they've got amazing food. They got a big menu, but man, the things that you can do there, there's 14 different things that you can do there, whether it's outside or inside. If you're on your phone there, it's because you're addicted. Because besides the amazing food, you know what I mean? There's so many different things you can do there.
So I would challenge our audience, anyone out there that's in Southeast Texas area, if you find yourself at a restaurant, especially a Rick and Jack's or one like that with 14 things to do there. You got miniature golf, video games. I think they do have a shuffleboard at one of their locations. I'm not sure if there's one in Lumberton, but regardless, I would challenge each of you for the hour or hour and a half that you're at the restaurant, put your phone down, do something else, get outside of your addiction to the digital distraction, and interact with another human being and see how fulfilling that would be. You know what I mean? What can we learn? What can we learn in the real world from a real person that's actual and factual rather than a fake quote that Abraham Lincoln
there's and I never would have believed this because there's several people here at RT that I pick and joke with because my son is a technician, and he's one of those guys that he can hyper focus on one thing and fix a lot of things. And I have that capability sometimes, but most of the time I like to be handling several different things at once. And I think I'm pretty good at it. But I'm really not doing those things. I think I'm multitasking when I'm really multi-managing. And that really doesn't work if it was me taking care of each task, because all I'm doing is depending on the people that are underneath me to take care of those challenges. If it was me being in charge of those tasks, I would just have 8 different tasks that weren't getting taken care of. So, so you look at that challenge and you realize if I didn't have those people actually finishing those tasks, my multitasking would never get done. So then I look at what is the cost of me splitting that up instead of taking care and actually finishing one of those tasks. And I look at what the cognitive load is of that. What is the switching cost instead of just finishing that one task? So I'm bouncing back and forth on those tasks. And by the time I'm done, I've started 5 tasks and I'm wore out and haven't completed any of them. You know what I mean? And that's
very valid point. Yeah. And you go home at the end of that day feeling 1,000 times more exhausted and anxiety ridden because you're dissatisfied with your own results, your own productivity level. And if you would have done exactly what you said and divided out one of those things and hyper focused on it, or not even hyper, but just focused on it all the way to finish and produce those results, you would have gone home with a sense of satisfaction, with a sense of fulfillment, with a sense of accomplishment. Look what I did. And you would have come back the next day and completed the next one out of the 8, and somebody would have added another 8, another one.
Absolutely.
To keep going, but at least you'd have a direction and you'd be able to look back. It's like, I used to own a mowing company and people wonder, why do you cut stripes in the grass? You ever think about that?
Yeah.
Well, you cut stripes in the grass. You don't just mow random because you can't tell that you're getting done. You can't see the progress. But if you mow lines and you look, your brain automatically formulates, wow, I've done this much progress in this amount of time. All I have to do is keep going and I can see the end.
That's right.
I'm going to finish. And mowing grass is one of the most gratifying things that a person can do, and
absolutely.
It's the same kind of thing. You get that pattern of focusing to finish, and you just feel so much better about yourself.
I agree. And I find myself trying to do that, trying to find little things. And if it's not a task, it's helping somebody else accomplish a task.
Yeah.
And I think in management, that changes. When I was in the field, it was all about accomplishing the task. If I was given a direction, it was to complete that directive. But in management, it was not to accomplish the task that I've given somebody else or that the initial piece of it. It was, what was I able to give that person so they could accomplish a task or several tasks, or maybe not even that day? What could they accomplish at the end of the week? And you had to find some of those small victories, even if it wasn't at the end of that day.
Right. Yeah.
And that's when you could look at it and say, okay, I didn't accomplish one thing today, but as a leader, sometimes you'd accomplish 5 and 6 things just by answering questions that day. And once I realized that's when it just gets amazing.
Sure. And that's bigger picture thinking. A lot of times when folks come, I had some twice this week and last week, I had these young people come in, both under 25, both right about that phase where they realize that their adulting is going to have to get better. And so what you just shared, and I hope they get to hear this later, was ideal, that they're going to have these dailies, but they don't need to just feel busy. They need to feel accomplished. And hopefully they'll have some midterm and long-term things that they can say, well, I didn't accomplish it today, but I contributed to it. And that's kind of what we do. We do as professionals, we do as parents. And I think if we if we can plan that out a little bit, so it's not just so haphazard and definitely not reactive, man, we're going to feel that sense of accomplishment, which hopefully will keep us from just this attraction to distraction, if you will,
Yeah. Well, you think about it, if you take it all the way back to, man in the beginning, when we're all at the beginning and, we were all those good looking cavemen, our brains were evolving to what was happening, to our surroundings and everything else. Busy work is not something that you naturally did. People didn't just get up and walk around and start sweeping just because it was something to do, or just walk around, pick up sticks just because they were laying on the ground. Everything had a purpose.
That's right.
I feel like the distractions, the just doing something just because you're bored, those type of things, they're just not a purposeful human being type of thing to do. If you can find a purpose and work toward that purpose, then it's something that helps you in your mind and in your being itself.
I love what you just said.
Yes.
Not to be too,
not to be in pursuit of anything, but
I mean, but the fascinating thing is, part of the directive behind the creation of this practice was the understanding, the realization that our society, our culture as humanity, not just culture in America, but humanity globally, we are losing our drive, our ambition towards purpose.
Yep.
We really are. Like, that's a part of this addiction to distraction. It's once you have a purpose, you have responsibility. Once you have responsibility, you have accountability. Once you have accountability, you feel pressure, you feel weight, you feel, and
well, that's a segue to accomplishment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is where our self-fulfillment comes from.
That's right.
From that getting things done.
But we seem to be as though we're in this pattern of avoidance of that, like a fear of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, I believe that segues us into a society of anxiety, because we're avoiding seeking our fulfillment.
Yeah. And that avoidance is kind of attributed to everything that we've talked about. Social media does the same thing. The whole keyboard warrior thing. Why are they keyboard warriors? Because people don't face each other all the time. You're always going to have some people that have a louder voice and a more smart aleck type voice. Those people just didn't tend to last as long, or they had a fatter lip, or a black eye. But those things, those kind of people, and I know not that I've ever been accused of being kind of that person in my younger years, surely not. But when you're that kind of person, you start to realize in your younger years that those kind of lessons stick with you, and you're like, okay, now you can use that quick wit for good. You know what I mean? And now, if you can realize those things in the beginning, now you can help teach people those lessons so they don't have to learn some of those harder lessons. Or you look at civil servants, people that can look at a problem and fix that problem or understand that problem really quickly. They don't just have to type it on Facebook. Now they can take some accountability and step into a position to kind of help that go along.
That's right.
That's kind of how the process is supposed to work. And I think social media can help that to a degree. It just doesn't always do that. But it doesn't always hurt it either. I think sometimes the bad piece of that gets shown and highlighted a little bit more. But I have definitely seen social media, Facebook in particular, take some really bad things that happen, and just when I thought it couldn't go good, I've seen it spin around and something really good happen out of it.
Yeah. I mean, just like we just had this local event. I don't want to get too specific, but
Sure.
Where we had there's a bar that's always in the news, always on social media, and there was an event with officers, and there was both sides of the spectrum happened.
Sure.
You had the social media going super negative and blowing the cops up and saying how bad they were. And then you had the other side come in, and they were focused on being vigilant and standing with law enforcement and saying how good of a job they did. And then you had the people saying how awesome the Good Samaritans were that helped the cop that, got hurt and everything like that. So that was a way to highlight. Whereas if we were left without that, without social media, without everybody with a cell phone, we would be left at the mercy of whatever the news coverage happened to cover that time.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't
That's right.
know. You wouldn't know both sides, so that's the good part of, instant news and everybody having the ability to be a reporter in the street,
Absolutely. And it gives us some perspective if you look into it. But, whether it's news cameras, whether it's cell phone cameras, whether it's just somebody in the front of a situation or somebody standing in the back of the situation. And I made a post about this the other day, and it comes from a place where it personally is directly pointed at me, is when you look at a situation like that, you definitely have to look at it with a lot of grace, because as deeply as I feel about that situation or any other situation that deals with that in any other way, if you don't look at it with some grace and with some understanding and try to find what we can do good and what we can be proactive and learn from, then you're not helping the situation. You're hurting the situation.
No, right. That's right.
Anybody can have a knee-jerk reaction, and anybody can talk about the negative, but that is not helping the situation. Find a proactive approach with it, take it and run with it to help the situation.
Yeah. And one of the super negative aspects to this is people lose focus on the truth, and they instead they focus on views. They focus on attention instead of the truth. And the problem with that is you're getting results based on whatever it takes, and that's not the truth. That's part of this, the negative, super negative part.
Addiction. That's addiction to distraction. Anybody can make a negative comment, and here's the thing: you can make a negative comment as your first comment, and then repent and say, oh, you know what? I learned some new information, and man, now I've turned my ways, and everybody will forgive you. But if you make a positive comment first, and step out first, and then you have to go the other way, all of a sudden there's crickets. It's a lot harder to make that tough stand first. You know what I mean? Like if you see that it's a negative comment, and then all of a sudden you kind of, oh, boy, people will praise you and they'll be clapping and hearts all over your post. Well, you make that positive comment first and on there. And if there was a cricket icon instead of a little heart or a thumb icon, that'd be 4,000 little cricket icons on there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen, but that's part of the way our social media society is.
Well, I'll tell you what, Elton, you have really brought some amazing insights into this topic. We appreciate you being on here as our guest. Is there anything you'd like to close out with, as far as, how about, do you have any techniques that you use to help you focus that might benefit an audience member that is looking for something? Like say there's somebody that works in a field that you touch, an industrial field, and they really struggle with the addiction to pick up and look at their phone during the day when they know it's wrong, they know it's unsafe. What are some techniques that somebody might employ that would help them from your standpoint?
What I do, especially when it comes to the office aspect of it and the leadership aspect, what I try to do here at the office is I'll take my phone and I'll plug it in to the charger, and I'll leave it in my office, and I will go talk and visit with somebody about something. And when I'm start talking and visiting with them about a situation, usually I'll be in there 10 or 15 minutes. And then as I'm walking by somebody else, we'll have another conversation. And before you know it, you're an hour or two, and then I'll make a loop around the shop, and you know what I mean? So those kind of cognitive things about purposeful, let's go have a conversation, let's visit with so-and-so. That's worked really well for me. And I'll be really honest with you, in the very beginning, I had, and this was twofold. One was, my Apple Watch would tell me, "Hey, man, it's time to get up and move." I would use it as a chance to leave my phone there and get up and make a loop around the shop, just to get away from the computer, get away from the phone. I use those kind of things to just kind of get out and get away from things. It's tough for me because I have not found many people that are addicted to their stuff as much as I am. It's kind of a joke around between my girlfriend and my close friends. They're like, "Yeah, but you're always on your phone." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I got 3 jobs. I got to do that." And then I'm like, "Yeah, that's a giant excuse." I don't even believe myself when I'm saying that.
So here's something that comes up a lot when people make a suggestion, and that's a valid suggestion. I love what you said.
Yeah.
So when you get back to your phone, when you finally return and pick it up, what do you tell the people who have tried to reach out to you and you've missed their call, missed their text? What do you say to them in response? Because that's something people get anxiety. Well, if they call and I miss their call, well,
this is going to sound crazy, but I don't get that when that happens. So wow. Here's what's funny. And I guess I'm the same way. Although I am anxious myself, when somebody emails me, especially a client, when a client emails me or they text me and they want something, I feel like they want me to respond right away. And in my business, there's a lot of good safety companies that do kind of what I do in the Golden Triangle. And the way I compete with them is I try to respond really quickly. You know what I mean? That's my part of my competitive edge. But what I deem as quickly and what they deem as quickly, lots of times would I respond within an hour or 2, that would be perfect for them. I'm trying to respond within 30 seconds, So I have to work on that, response time and what's truly there. But what I found is when you're doing that, people that know you and when you build that relationship, they are extremely understanding. People that know that I do several different things, I don't even know that I can think of a time where somebody said, "You didn't respond in enough time."
Right. That's usually the case.
Yeah. If I got chastised because I didn't do something in time, it was because I truly didn't do something in time. It wasn't because I didn't pick up my phone or because I didn't do whatever. It's because I really dropped the ball. But that's my experience with it.
The takeaway from that would be that the world's not going to end because you took an hour or 2 hours away from your phone. And you know how you said you like quotes, I know another guy who likes quotes a lot. And one of my favorite ones is related to that. And it is be valuable, not available.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That wasn't Henry Ford, right?
I'm not going to claim to know who said it. I'll say it was Elton Hollis III.
Go with that. Yeah. Yes.
Man. I need 1 or 2 added. That'll be good.
Next time I post that one, I'm going to put EH3.
There you go.
That little dash, and then you just put that there. And
there you go. That'll help me out. That'll move me up the line a little bit.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. We look forward to having you back as a guest later on for many other topics that we're going to talk about. Some of them are going to be a little different, but it's going to be a lot of fun. This series is something we've been excited to bring to our audience, and we just really appreciate you being a part of it. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Elton. Excellent insights, especially in general, but definitely in your industry. And I know that those people who'll be able to hear this, that we have a lot of folks from industry that listen, and they need some tips. They need the ways to respond because a lot of them are aging in their industry. They're bringing in these youngers, and they need ways to get those young people in line too, and help them be more productive and less distracted. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, guys. Always a great time visiting with you guys. And look, if there is anybody that's messed it up 3 or 4 times, it is me. So
Well,
if I can save somebody from doing it 3 or 4 times wrong, then I'm all about it.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience. Thank you all for allowing us to become a part of the pursuit of your purpose. Make sure you tune in every Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And if it doesn't show live, just be patient because we'll record it and we'll publish it for you. Thank you to our audience. Y'all have a great day.